He had trained himself to sleep lightly, not because he expected danger, but because the world had taught him that the moment you surrendered awareness, something important tended to slip through your fingers. The phone buzzed once on the nightstand. He didn't reach for it right away. Late 40s now, retired on paper, quiet life built carefully on routines that didn't attract attention. Sunrise runs, black coffee, a house chosen for how forgettable it looked from the street. The second vibration came 3 seconds later. That was what made him move. He read the message without unlocking the phone. A video thumbnail, a blurred face, a timestamp that didn't belong to his time zone. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe the channel and let me know in the comments where are you watching from. It helps more than you know. The notification below it didn't belong to a platform. It belonged to a number he hadn't seen in years. Unknown sender, incoming video attached. He opened it. The clip was short, grainy, poor lighting on purpose. His daughter sat on the floor, hands visible, breathing controlled in the way she'd learned from him when she was younger and scared of storms. Her face was bruised but composed, chin lifted like she refused to let whoever filmed it decide how she would be seen. She looked straight into the camera. "Dad," she said quietly, "I need you." The video cut off. He sat there for a long moment, phone still in his hand. The room suddenly too small for the air it held. 20 years old now. That fact hit harder than the message itself. Old enough to travel alone. Old enough to believe the world would be kind if you were careful. Young enough to trust that distance didn't mean abandonment. He stood, already moving, muscle memory sliding into place without asking permission. The message that followed arrived as he pulled on a jacket. "You have something we want. We have something you want more." He didn't respond. Men who sent messages like that wanted panic, negotiation, proof that they'd reached inside your chest and grabbed something vital. He denied them all three. He moved to the safe in the closet, thumb pressing the hidden latch behind a row of forgotten books. Inside were things he had sworn not to touch again. Passports with names that no longer existed. A phone that never rang unless it mattered. A patch, folded carefully, edges worn smooth. He picked up the phone first. One call. The line connected on the second ring. "Tell me it's not real," the voice on the other end said. "It's real," he replied. "I just got the video." Silence stretched. Then a breath. Controlled. Familiar. "Where?" "South of the border," he said. "Not where they want me to think." Another pause. "You're thinking coast or interior?" "Interior," he said. "Rural. They want time. Do we do this clean or loud?" He considered that. Interesting made things louder. Dangerous. Unpredictable. But also personal. "We do it deniable," he said. "But we don't rush." A low exhale came through the speaker. "I'll wake the others. Tell them to bring everything," he said. "And nothing that traces back." He ended the call and went back to the video, watching it again without sound. Her eyes told him everything. She wasn't broken. She was waiting. By sunrise, tickets were booked under names that would never appear together on a manifest. Routes chosen that bent around expectations instead of charging through them. By noon, he was on a plane that didn't ask questions, heading toward a country he knew well enough to respect. He didn't think about what he would do when he found her. That kind of thinking came later. For now, there was only preparation. Because whoever sent that video had made a fundamental mistake. They thought the past stayed buried. They thought a man could walk away from what he was and leave it behind like an old uniform. They were about to learn the difference between a retired operator and a finished one. And somewhere, very far from this quiet house, people were already underestimating the kind of attention they had just drawn to themselves. They regrouped in a place that didn't exist on paper. A rental house outside a coastal city that never slept long enough to notice who came and went. The kind of place where lights stayed on all night and nobody asked why. He arrived last, moving through the front door with the same quiet economy he'd used his entire career. 4 people were already there, older now, slower in ways that mattered and sharper in ways that didn't show. Men who had learned how to disappear in plain sight and come back only when the work demanded it. No greetings, no questions. A tablet slid across the table the moment he sat down. Ransom video metadata, one of them said. Stripped, but sloppy. They wanted you angry, not careful. He watched the clip again, this time frame by frame. Background noise, A generator with a hiccup in its cycle. Dust in the air that suggested dry ground, not jungle. A shadow crossing the wall behind her that told him more than the man holding the camera ever intended. They moved her recently, he said. This isn't a long-term site. Another man leaned forward. You sure? Positive, he replied. They're rotating locations to slow response. Means they're afraid of it. That earned a few nods. They mapped it out without theatrics. Routes, likely supply lines. Which groups operated in that region and which ones preferred intimidation over silence. This wasn't a cartel trying to disappear someone. This was leverage. Leverage only worked if the person on the other end believed in restraint. That was their second mistake. A new message came in while they worked. You have 48 hours. He didn't answer. Instead, he forwarded it to a contact who no longer worked for the government, but still knew how paperwork moved when it needed to. Border surveillance. The man said over the phone. Unofficial. I can get eyes on vehicle traffic. Nothing more. That's enough, he replied. By nightfall, they had a working picture. A corridor used by smugglers who preferred isolation to speed. A compound that didn't show up on any official map, but appeared often enough in intercepted chatter to matter. They geared up quietly. No speeches. No rituals. Just checks. He ran a hand over the equipment laid out on the table. Familiar weight. Familiar balance. It felt wrong how right it still felt. You sure about this? One of them asked, not challenging, confirming. I don't need certainty, he said. I need access. They moved before dawn. 2 vehicles. Civilian. Forgettable. They drove until pavement gave up and dirt took over, then parked and finished on foot. The air changed as they climbed. Thinner. Drier. The kind of place sound carried farther than you wanted it to. They stopped short of the ridge and went prone. Below them, the compound sat quiet. Fences more symbolic than functional. Lights positioned for intimidation, not defense. Men with weapons who stood like they expected trouble but didn't understand it. She's there, he said. How do you know? Someone asked. He tapped the screen. A heat signature barely visible through the roofline. Smaller than the others. Stationary. They haven't moved her, he said. They think the clock protects them. They split into pairs. No rush. No heroics. Timing was everything. When they moved, it was clean. Power cut first. Confusion second. Men disarmed before they understood they were vulnerable. A door breached without noise. Another cleared without resistance. He reached the interior hallway and stopped. There were marks on the wall where something heavy had been dragged. He followed them. She was in a back room, seated on the floor exactly like in the video, posture controlled, eyes lifting the moment he stepped into view. For a split second, she didn't believe it. Then she stood. Dad, she said, voice steady but breaking at the edges. He crossed the room and pulled her into him, holding on just long enough to let her know it was real. I've got you, he said. She nodded against his shoulder. I knew you would. Gunfire echoed outside. Brief, distant, already ending. We're leaving, he said. Now. As they moved her out, she glanced back once. Not in fear, but in understanding. Whatever came next would not end here. And whoever thought this would be simple had just learned how wrong they were. They did not linger. That was the rule they had learned the hard way. Never let success convince you the danger was finished. The compound went dark behind them as they moved uphill, the night swallowing the noise they left behind. By the time the first confused shouts reached the tree line, they were already ghosts. He kept his hand on his daughter's shoulder as they walked, not guiding, not pushing, just there, a steady point she could feel without having to look. You okay to keep moving? He asked quietly. She nodded. I'm not tired. He knew what that meant. Adrenaline, relief, the refusal to stop until safety felt permanent. They reached the extraction point just as the horizon began to pale. The vehicle waited exactly where it was supposed to. Engine cold, driver still. No one spoke until they were inside and moving. Only then did he turn to her fully. Tell me what you need, he said. She thought for a moment. Water, she said, and 5 minutes. He handed her a bottle and watched her drink with measured sips, like she was afraid of wasting it. He let the silence stretch, resisting the urge to fill it with reassurances that came too easily. After a few minutes, she leaned back and closed her eyes. They told me you wouldn't come, she said. Said you were too careful. He smiled faintly. They misunderstood what I'm careful about. The team split before sunrise. No goodbyes. No promises to keep in touch. They all knew how this ended when it ended well, by dissolving back into separate lives. He and his daughter crossed the border using a route that didn't require explanations. Paperwork caught up later. It always did when the right people nudged it forward. By afternoon, they were in a safe house that smelled like fresh paint and clean linens. A place built for decompression, not hiding. A medic checked her vitals. An advocate asked questions she could choose to answer or decline. She answered some, declined others. He stayed nearby, but out of the way, listening for the cadence of distress that would tell him when to step back in. That night, she slept for 12 uninterrupted hours. He did not. He sat at the table and opened a file he had sworn never to reopen. Names, routes, accounts, the quiet infrastructure that powered the men who had taken his daughter, and the ones who protected them with distance and fear. He did not plan revenge. He planned removal. The next morning, he made 3 calls. The first went to a financial analyst who specialized in tracing cash through layers of legitimate fronts. The second to a prosecutor who owed him nothing but respected clean cases. The third to a journalist who knew how to tell a story without turning it into spectacle. He gave each of them just enough. "This is how it starts," the analyst said. "It won't be quick. It doesn't need to be," he replied. His daughter joined him at breakfast, hair still damp from a shower that had gone on longer than necessary. "They're not coming after us, are they?" she asked. "No," he said. "They don't want attention anymore." She studied his face. "You're sure?" "Yes." She nodded, satisfied, and changed the subject. By the end of the week, the first domino tipped. Accounts froze. Vehicles seized. A local official resigned without explanation. Another went silent. The journalist called him late one night. "It's bigger than you said," she admitted. "There are connections I didn't expect." "There always are," he said. "Print what you can prove." "I will," she replied. "But they're going to know this started with you." He considered that. "They already do." The story broke quietly. No names at first, just patterns, just facts. It spread anyway. His daughter read the article over his shoulder and shook her head. "All this," she said, "because they thought you wouldn't answer the phone." He smiled. "Because they thought distance was protection." Weeks passed. Therapy appointments settled into routine. School resumed online, then in person. She laughed again, tentative at first, then easier. One evening she asked, "Are you going back?" He thought about it. "Not yet," he said. "There are things here that need me." She leaned against him, satisfied with that answer. Across the border, arrests followed investigations. Investigations followed audits. The network that had believed itself untouchable began to fracture under the weight of its own exposure. He closed the file one final time and slid it into the back of a drawer. The work wasn't finished, but the balance had shifted, and this time it was not in their favor. The fallout did not arrive all at once. It came in layers, quiet at first, then undeniable. A bank in a coastal city flagged irregular transfers and froze accounts without explanation. A shipping firm lost its license pending review. A local official resigned citing health reasons that convinced no one who read past the headline. None of it traced back to him. That was the point. He watched the updates come in while his daughter worked through homework at the kitchen table, pencil tapping lightly against paper. Ordinary sounds had returned to the house. He let them exist without interruption. "How long does this take?" she asked, not looking up. "As long as it needs to," he said. "Longer than they expect." She nodded and kept writing. Therapy shifted again. Fewer questions about what happened, more about what came next. The counselor spoke about agency and boundaries, and the slow work of trusting your own instincts again. His daughter listened, sometimes pushing back, sometimes absorbing in silence. He learned when to leave the room. The journalist called with a follow-up draft. Names were still redacted, but the structure was clear now. Money flowed in patterns that were impossible to dismiss. Protection came from familiarity, not strength. Exposure did the rest. "This won't make everyone happy," she warned. "It shouldn't," he replied. "It should make things stop." Court filings followed the articles. Not dramatic, Procedural. The kind of paperwork that changed lives without ever raising its voice. Warrants issued. Properties seized. A few men tried to run. None of them ran far. He took his daughter to the coast one afternoon. Not to celebrate. Just to breathe somewhere the horizon wasn't blocked. They walked along the water without talking much. When she stopped to kick at the tide, he stopped with her. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The work." He considered the question carefully. "I miss being useful," he said. "I don't miss what it took." She nodded like she understood more than she let on. That night an unfamiliar number lit up his phone. He answered without greeting. "They're asking questions," the voice said. "The right ones." "Good," he replied. "They're scared. That means they're listening." He ended the call and set the phone down. The next morning brought a message from a legal liaison confirming what he already knew. Charges were being consolidated. Jurisdictions cooperating. The network was no longer a rumor. His daughter read the message over his shoulder and exhaled slowly. "So that's it?" she asked. "It's the middle," he said. "But the ending is decided." School administrators called with accommodations. Teachers offered flexibility without prying. Friends asked questions she could answer or ignore. She chose both, depending on the day. One evening, she cooked dinner without asking for help. He stayed nearby, but didn't interfere. When she finished, she plated the food and slid a dish toward him. "I didn't burn it," she said, smiling. "High bar," he replied, smiling back. Afterward, she sat on the couch and leaned her head against his shoulder, the way she had when she was younger and storms rattled the windows. "I don't feel broken," she said quietly. "I thought I would." He rested his chin lightly on her hair. "You were never broken." Across the border, the final moves were already underway. A coordinated sweep, not dramatic, effective, the kind that ended things without turning them into legends. The journalist sent one last note. "It's done." He replied with a single word. "Good." Later that night, he stood at the window and watched the streetlights flicker on. The world outside looked unchanged. Cars passed. A dog barked. Someone laughed down the block. He knew better. Change didn't always announce itself. Sometimes it settled in quietly, took root, and made itself impossible to ignore. He turned off the light and went back to the living room, where his daughter was already asleep, book open on her chest. The house felt steady, and somewhere far away, people who had relied on silence were learning how loud accountability could be. The arrests happened on a Tuesday, not at dawn, not under flashing lights, just men being asked to stand up, turn around, and accept that the ground beneath them was no longer solid. Papers were served. Vehicles were taken. Accounts were sealed with language that did not invite negotiation. The work ended the way it always did when done correctly, quietly. He read the final brief at the kitchen table while his daughter packed for school. The charges were specific. The timelines clean. No room for theatrics or reinterpretation. The system had finished assembling itself, and now it moved on its own momentum. He folded the document once and set it aside. "Is it really over?" she asked from the doorway. "Yes," he said. "This part is." She nodded, absorbing it, then slung her bag over her shoulder. "I'll be late. Study group. Text me when you're done," he replied. "I will." The door closed behind her with a sound that felt normal again. Life resumed in small, unremarkable ways. Appointments spaced out. News cycles moved on. Names that had once carried weight slipped into obscurity where they belonged. The journalist sent a final note confirming publication of the last piece. He didn't read it twice. He didn't need to. One afternoon, his daughter came home with a paper folded carefully in her hand. She sat across from him and slid it over. "It's not for anyone else," she said. "Just you." He read it slowly. She had written about fear without giving it power, about distance and how it failed the people who believed in it, about learning that asking for help did not make you weak, it made you reachable. He looked up. "This took courage." She shrugged. "I had help." That night, they cooked together. Music played softly. Something burned slightly. They laughed anyway. Later, as the house settled, she paused at the hallway and turned back. "You didn't make it louder than it needed to be," she said. "Thank you." He understood exactly what she meant. "That was the point," he replied. Weeks passed. Spring edged closer. Windows opened. The air changed. He declined an offer to return to the work. Not forever, just enough to stay where he was needed most. The world did not fall apart without him, it never had. One evening they sat on the porch and watched the sky darken. No urgency, no plans beyond tomorrow. She leaned back in her chair and stretched. "I feel safe," she said, surprised by her own certainty. He nodded. "You are." The phone stayed silent. The past stayed where it belonged. Not erased, contained. When he turned in for the night, he checked the locks once out of habit, then stopped himself. Old reflex. The house did not require vigilance anymore. He switched off the light and let the quiet exist without interrogation. Some endings came with applause, others with aftermath. This one came with peace. And if you've been listening this far, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you're watching from. It helps more than you know.